Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening, a.k.a. Fox News Light. I'm here with my co-hosts Gail Burke and Elia Margolis, and my name is George Binns, and we're doing another of the 5 minus 2 because we volunteered to have some other attitudes and positions here, and nobody's taking us up on it yet, so the offer is still good. What I wanted to start the discussion on tonight is the troubling editorials that I see in the New York Times. There was an editorial back in 1987 that the New York Times was opposed to any increase in the minimum wage. In fact, they were saying we ought to take the minimum wage back to zero. 2014, they've changed their position. Now they're saying that they're in favor of a very substantial increase. So there's been a very dramatic shift in the editorial policy of the New York Times. Another one of their editorials that caught my eye was the rise of ISIS, no single key but many strands of blame, which to me translates to there's no way they can figure out how they can blame George Bush for it, so they've got to sort of soft pedal the whole idea, where did ISIS come from? Then last week there was another one about, to reduce suicides, keep guns away. That's interesting. If you go into the CDC data and look up their mortality rates, actually their morbidity rates, people don't die, they become morbid. In 2013, there were 33,636 deaths by firearms, and 21,175 of them were ones self-inflicted. So something like 2/3 of the firearms deaths are caused by people doing themselves in. Suicides, in other words. And the total number of suicides is 41,149. So just about half of the suicides are caused by people shooting themselves. And then the Times says, well, if you take the guns away, that's going to solve the problem. If somebody is really that serious, that desperate to end it all, I'm quite certain they'll find another way to do it. And the last one that got to me was, don't blame mental health for gun violence. And they try to make the case that, well, only a few people actually go psychotic and shoot up the town. And they're totally ignoring the issue from a week earlier about all the suicides. And at the same time, they're trying to say that, well, guns have a very interesting characteristic. Even though they're inanimate objects, they've got an evil intent. They will jump out of nowhere and shoot somebody. And this kind of thinking that's behind this really bothers me in that we're coming into a serious election year and we're getting this kind of stories. I don't know what the voters are going to have to base their position on, or go to the polls, or just say, the heck with it, this isn't worth working on, and we will become essentially a nation of, well, the three people that voted control the whole thing.
Well, let's hope that some of the voters, a lot of the voters, have some common sense, because that's what's missing in all this gun control and all this nonsense.
Well, let's first take the first item you brought up, which was the minimum wage.
Yeah.
It is possible that for whatever reason they change their mind, and that's okay. I mean, people can, through the years, change their minds. Hillary does it about every other week.
Yeah.
And a lot of politicians change their mind when they see the polls and they say, gee, maybe I should change my mind to get more votes. So, people change their minds.
Yeah.
The Times can change their mind, but the reality is a minimum wage is designed basically for like high school kids to get a job, learn the work, what it's like to work for somebody else, and get an incentive to do better. It's not supposed to be a living wage. It was never designed to be a living wage. And if the Times is suggesting it should be a living wage, then that's where they're wrong, because here's the reality. no matter what the minimum wage is, it's always going to be too small. You can never eliminate poverty. The more money you make, it's just a different level of poverty. I mean, if the minimum that everybody makes is $100,000 a year, that means that's the poverty level because everybody else is making more money.
Well, it seems as though we have the same poverty level now that we had when LBJ was president. Even after his war on poverty, nothing seems to work. Either that or the statistics are not true.
Well, before you get wound up on that, you have to recognize that there is poverty and then there's poverty. By definition, it's the bottom 20%. And there's always going to be a bottom 20%. And the point you're starting to get into is if the bottom 20% is making more money, they're still in poverty by definition. The real attitude or the real position of poverty is you look at some of these other countries where people are living on $1.25 a day, and you look at them and they're definitely emaciated, they're definitely sick, they don't have the medical coverage that the average person around here gets. That is real poverty. And that's a real hardship kind of life. In this country, poverty, they got a cell phone, they got food stamps, they got bunches of other reinforcements. We've got a safety net that is made out of velvet rope.
Right.
Well,
So
Anybody who's in
that as
poverty
being
in this country is considered rich
Yeah,
in
compared to other
most
countries.
of the countries of the
Yeah.
world.
well, the thing is, they have all these programs for the people who are in poverty, but nothing works.
Well,
Why are we spending all this money
but it
on all
doesn't-
these programs if
There's
it
a
doesn't
reason
work?
why it doesn't work. And the reason is all these programs don't give anybody an incentive to do better.
That's right.
Now, in a previous life, Milton Friedman, I don't know if you remember Milton
Yeah.
Friedman, a phenomenal economist. Okay,
Yep.
he believed in the negative income tax, and of course, our president at the time didn't like the negative income tax. But what the negative income tax did was it gave you an incentive to do better. If you're on welfare and you're making, for argument's sake, $100 a week on welfare, and you got a job to make and you made $50, they're not going to take $50 out of your welfare check. They might take $10 or $12 out of your welfare check, which says, gee, by working, I'm making more money.
Yeah.
And that's the way it worked with the negative income tax. Milton Friedman was right. But what we do instead is say, have another kid and we'll give you more money. There are people, illegal aliens in this country, who are having kid after kid after kid, and they're making more money than people who are on Social Security who work their entire lives in this country to make this country better.
There are
And it doesn't, it's
There are
not
states
worth it for them
around-
to work.
Right.
No, there are states around that when you get on welfare, you're making $30,000, $35,000 a year in total benefits by the time you count in food stamps and all the rest of that
All
stuff.
the other programs.
And the point you're getting to is, hey, if I'm living that comfortably at that level, why go out and waste my time working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that the way the program got incentivized is to get more and more people on the government dole.
Well, they make, years ago, when I was growing
That's how
up.
Democrats get elected.
Right.
You
When I
think
was
so?
growing up, it was shameful to be on welfare, and you did everything in the world you could to try and avoid it. Well, time went by, and the next generation thought, you know, we can't have that because there are people who need to be on welfare, and that's okay. But then it became like, oh, well, I can go on welfare, and I don't have to work. I can do just as well working and getting all the benefits that the government gives out, so why should I work? And that's the problem.
And they're eating better meat than we eat at the supermarket because
That's right.
we're paying for it.
Yeah.
You know?
And if the
there's got to be
Democrats
limitations
continue-
on what they can get. They can get lottery tickets on welfare.
They can get cash on
Cigarettes.
welfare.
They can get cash on welfare.
Well, that's another one of the problems is the government creates these programs and then they just walk away from
Yeah.
it, and they don't
There's no
control them.
oversight.
And you know the other thing that really kind of annoys me? Social Security.
Be careful.
Back when,
You're not on
okay,
it
no,
yet. We are.
trust me on this one. You'll agree with me on this one. When FDR was president and came out with Social Security, they had a death benefit of $250 so you could bury somebody. You know how far $250 goes today on a death benefit? And they have never increased the death benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. But that's your government in action.
Well, the other
Okay.
problem with Social Security is that it was created as a fiction. That I went through the statistics one time. A white male born in 1937, my life expectancy was 61 years. And they set the retirement age at 65. They had no intention of taking care of anybody who got
Who passed
elderly,
that?
or the very few that did, well, we could probably take care of them. And as a result, they've never indexed that number to reality, either in terms of how much money you should be collecting to cover the cost of welfare and what the retirement age really ought to be. So as a result, they wring their hands every so often. Oh, the Social Security is in deep trouble.
Yeah, but
We
that's
gotta
because
do
it's a
something.
Ponzi scheme. I mean, they,
Wait.
what's his face? Al Gore.
Yes.
You know, his lockbox.
Oh, yeah, that's a joke.
I mean, come on. They don't put the Social Security money that they collect into this lockbox.
It's all IOUs in there.
Right.
One
I
of the
change?
regulations in the Social Security is they have to
I'm going
invest
to.
the money in the safest investment possible. The safest investment possible in this country is buy government bonds. So what do? They buy government bonds. And our money is invested in government bonds. And the interest from that is supposed to be paying our Social Security. Well, that's all well and good until they figure out, that's another source of money that we don't have to go to Congress to get a raise on the debt ceiling. And I think it started with LBJ that they raided the lockbox. Really what they're doing is just getting more Social Security bonds to spend on things that, well, that'd be nice to do, as opposed to this really needs to be done, and therefore we need to borrow the money to do it.
And the lesson to be learned from this, even with the gun thing that you were talking about, because I know we don't have time really to discuss that, but the lesson to be learned is to know your history.
Yeah.
Because if you look at history and you see what happened and when we do it, you won't make those same mistakes. The trouble is, our politicians, who are, for the most part, liberal, don't know how to read.
Well, if you expect the next generation to know history, good luck. We have to change a
Right.
lot.
Right.
And I want to change the subject.
Yes, you do.
Since it is Christmas time, I wanted to talk about Christmas. However, I was listening to the radio this morning, and it appears that the war on Christmas is alive and well, unfortunately. In Stoneham, Massachusetts, a substitute teacher in the schools was teaching a class of second graders, and they were talking about the North Pole. And the teacher blurted out that, well, there is no Santa Claus. And the little children just couldn't believe what she was saying. And she said, no, there is no Santa Claus. Your parents buy all those presents. And some of them started crying. When they went home and told their parents, the parents were up in arms. They called the school, and the school said, well, we have no control because she's a substitute teacher, and we didn't know what she was going to talk about. So now they're blaming the agency that she comes from. My question is, don't they talk to the teachers before they hire them to come into the classroom? I mean,
Well, I don't think you can talk to a teacher. Why would you ask a teacher, do you believe in Santa Claus?
it's not
I mean,
that.
but-
It's to get a feel of what she's only a substitute.
Right.
What are you going to talk about today?
She's just an idiot.
Well, technically,
Okay.
what the substitute should be doing is taking the lesson plan that was left by the teacher she's substituting for
Yeah.
and following that lesson plan.
That's
But
right.
the problem you get into is people have their own agendas. It's like this principal
right.
in New York that decided we're going to eliminate any Christmas stuff in the school. And
And, well, I
that
understand that.
eventually backed down.
But then I started thinking about it, and I went back, and I did a little bit of research on what has been happening with these young kids and in some of with the older kids. And I found that in New York, there was another sourpuss teacher in Rockland County, and this is in 2011. And the article said even the Grinch wouldn't be this mean. But she did the same thing. She told them there's no Santa Claus, and again, she was talking about the North Pole. And it's amazing how these liberals will have a subject, and this goes back to some of the things that our own superintendent has talked about when they were talking about different classes and how they integrate different things into the class. This is how they get, they have a history lesson and they start talking about religion. Well, they can't talk about, they're not supposed to teach religion, but this is how they get into the different kinds of religion, and they concentrate on one religion, and that one religion is usually Muslim.
There was a case in Kentucky where the school was putting on a play, okay, and it was the Peanuts Christmas
The
story.
Charlie Brown Christmas.
The Charlie
Yes,
Brown
yeah.
Christmas story. And I guess at the end of the story, Linus gets up and he quotes a line from the Bible
Right.
and mentions Jesus, the Savior,
Yep.
and all that. The school department decided you can't do that.
Oh, yeah.
You can't do that.
You can't do that.
I mean,
you can talk about Allah all you want, but don't ever mention Jesus.
you know, when I grew up in the Beverly school system, we used to sing Christmas carols and give out Christmas cards and give out Valentine's Day cards. And
Yeah.
you know what? I'm Jewish, so what? You know, it's good to learn about other religions and about other kids.
Well, these are our customs.
And you know what? Hopefully most of the viewers think I turned out all right. But I mean,
Well,
I don't
that's
think
debatable.
I don't think I was hurt
No.
by doing this.
No.
I mean, get a life. I mean, what is wrong with learning about other people and other religions and enjoying? I mean, this is the Christmas season. It's not the happy holiday season.
That's right.
It's the Christmas
it's not the
season.
winter
and if
season.
it wasn't for Christmas, there wouldn't be any big deal.
That's right.
So, Merry Christmas, everybody.
That's right.
You know, and I'm not offended if somebody says Merry Christmas to me.
Well, I have to follow that up with House Republicans have introduced a bill to protect the holiday. A group of conservatives, mind you, do not want the Christmas traditions and symbols to recede from the public life. So they have finally gotten together to fight to keep nativity scenes on display in town squares, the Christmas tree, Christmas carols, the whole shebang, all of it, that we used to enjoy and nobody made a big deal about. And the interesting thing about when they have problems and they disband that and they get rid of it, it's usually one or two people that do the complaining. Anyway, this House resolution invokes the First Amendment, and it says that reference to religion or God should not be prohibited in civic dialogue. So this Senator Colorado Representative Doug Lamborn introduced this resolution. And hopefully it will pass the House, and let's hope that it passes the Senate, so we can all get back to not feeling guilty, not feeling offended. If you're offended by it,
Get the
that's
hell
too
out of the
bad.
country.
That's too bad. These
You know,
are our
just
customs.
if you don't like it, leave.
Yeah.
Any
Exactly.
Muslim that doesn't like the fact that this is a Christian country, Judeo-Christian principles, if you don't like it,
Yeah.
get the hell
Yeah.
out.
Christmas is a
real
wonderful
simple.
time. It's a wonderful time of the year. So let's celebrate it and be happy about it.
Right, absolutely.
Nothing from you, George?
No. Well, you're saying the fundamental thing is the people come here because they see in the United States an opportunity. And the opportunity is not something you can find anyplace else in the world.
That's right.
So why do you want to change it if it's so good? You know, the one I like is there is no problem with people sneaking across the Mexican border going south. There's a reason for that. And the people that come here and think that, well, the United States is good, but I can make it so much better by making it just like the place I left behind because it was so bad. That kind of logic just blows my mind, that people just aren't thinking. It's not common sense. Common sense is an oxymoron, I think, at this stage of the game. It just, the stuff that comes out, the New York Times has got me wound up this week, but you see it all over the place. The one that I got into is talking about Bernie Sanders, and what he wants to think is, he's got a statement that says, it's profoundly wrong that 1% of the country owns more wealth than the bottom 95%. And you start to get into, why does he think that way? And people try to rationalize what he must be thinking. And one of the comments that got me is, many rich people are under the misapprehension that they have earned their wealth and so are entitled to it.
The misapprehension?
Misapprehension, yes.
Sounds like
If they're
Barack
not entitled
Obama.
to the wealth, who is? And the answer will come back very quickly from your liberal and progressive friends. Oh, you didn't build that. The government did. You didn't make that happen. It's because of the government. Or in the case of some kid that goes wild or goes strange, or you get this a criminal element and says, well, it really wasn't their fault. It was society's fault because they had a bad upbringing or they had a poor shot.
Well, according to Bernie Sanders, the government knows how to spend your money better than you do.
Yeah.
So if you inherit money because your family worked well, you don't deserve it. So give it to the government so that we can.
So they can do
waste
what they
it.
want with
So
it.
yeah, they know better for us than what we know.
Yeah.
And you know that. Good luck, Bernie. I mean, frankly, Bernie, I hope you beat Hillary.
Well, Bernie
But-
and Hillary both want to give freebies. They want to give everything free to
Well, let
whoever
the Clinton
wants it.
Foundation give it free.
I think
You
that's a
know?
great idea.
You know, the Clinton Foundation, interesting thing. When somebody calls you for a donation or, you know, anything, one of the questions you always want to ask is, how much of the money that I give you goes to the need or goes to administration? And if it's about 90% or more than 90%, you don't mind giving a donation. If the Clinton Foundation, 95% of the money goes to the Clintons and 5% goes to the cause.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just plain robbery.
Yeah.
She ought to be put in jail for that.
Well, that's the way that they bias the system so that they can pull these kinds of shenanigans. And both of them are notorious for giving these $250,000 speeches. I can't imagine they could say anything in an hour and a half that's worth $250,000.
However, if that 250,000 went to the government like Bernie wants it to happen, then fine.
Yeah.
Give it to the government. They know how to spend your money better than you do.
And
You've only been around for how many years spending your own money, and you don't know what the heck you're doing.
Yep.
If they're doing so well spending it, why do they keep raising the taxes? Why do they keep raising the debt?
Why do we have deficit? Yeah.
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 And why don't we have a good
Apparently-
military anymore?
Yeah, apparently they're not spending it very wisely. And people like
Bernie
Hillary,
thinks they are.
and so does Hillary, and so does Barack Obama.
Well, you get into the debt issue and the thing I was mentioning earlier that all of a sudden they discover that we got to do something about ISIS. Oh, we need to put some boots on the ground. Well, how many boots do you really have that it can put on the ground? And the thing that upset me a while back is one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, hey, we can't fight 2 wars at the same time anymore. This used to be the standard for the U.S. military. We can fight 2 wars in 2 different locations at the same time. And this was the basis for developing the size of the military that we had. And we did it in World War II. We had a battle going on in Europe and one in the Pacific. And we fought both of them to a successful, from our point of view, conclusion. The other guys didn't think it worked out so well, but hey, that's what the war is about. And you get into the situation that we went into Afghanistan and when it went into Iraq. And from my perspective, we won both wars and then lost the peace. And this is one of the problems that people don't recognize, that ISIS, aside from the fact that they're competing with Al-Qaeda, because Al-Qaeda faded and they didn't get the job done, they're trying to create a caliphate. Al-Qaeda was trying to do the same thing. And there's a really great writer, a guy named George Freeman. He used to write for Stratfor, now he writes for Malden, that goes in and analyzes some of these situations. And his perspective right now is ISIS is looking for a fight. They want the Armageddon. They want to get us to put boots on the ground and do the same thing to them that they did in Iraq. And after the war is over, they fade into the woodwork, and we get into one of these guerrilla war situations that you can't win unless you win the hearts and souls of the people. And that is an almost impossible task in that part of the world.
It goes back to that history lesson that I had suggested. If you look at history, Obama said we were in the wrong war in Iraq and we belonged in Afghanistan, right? If you look at history, no one has ever been able to win a war in Afghanistan.
Right. Well,
No
we have
one.
a president that will not even acknowledge, he won't even say the word ISIS. It's always ISIL.
But
And there's a big difference.
But he also said that we have the capability of defeating ISIS, and wiping them out. He said that in a speech last week, that we can do that.
But he won't do it.
But he won't do it.
Yeah.
He just won't do
No.
it.
Yeah.
No, well, he doesn't want to leave that as part of his legacy. And that's the bottom line. And all I can say is, I think this next year is going to be very, very scary. I think he's going to try and do everything he can to destroy this country.
Well, he's trying to sneak out of town without leaving any debris behind. And
Meanwhile, just getting back to that
Well,
gun issue for a second.
Well,
or
I think
maybe
that we're
not.
going to have to stop it here because we're almost out of time. And sorry about that.
No, you're not. I know you're not sorry.
Oh, we have such a good time when we do these shows. But I just want to say thank you, both of you, for everything this year. This will probably be our last show of the year, of 2014. We've had a great time. We've had a number of extremely interesting people. And I want to thank the crew of BevCam and especially our own crew, the camera people, our director. We've really had a very productive year. And we will see you next year with even more interesting shows. So good night and thank you for watching.